Welcome to the Comic Sauce Podcast, where we talk comics and comics culture. I am Henry Liu, and today I'm joined by Christian Diadamo. Christian, how's it going?
Hey, hey, it's going well. Happy to be here.
Cool, cool. I'm also joined by Porfirio Rangel. Porfirio, how goes?
All is well. Thanks, Henry. Happy to be here as well.
Excellent. So today is a special episode. We're going to talk about the 40th anniversary of Back to the Future. 40 years, can you believe it? And to moderate the discussion, Christian, take it away.
All right, thanks, Henry. All right, so Back to the Future released on July 3rd, 1985. So we are celebrating 40 years, and this has been 40 years of a very, very beloved movie. Everybody knows this movie. So many people, definitely including myself, grew up watching it. And on a personal note, full disclosure before we truly get into this is my favorite movie.
Hey,
And I am also just going to give the spoiler warning now for this movie. We are going to talk everything about this movie and go into it. We may even talk a little bit about the sequels as well. So this movie doesn't really need much of an introduction, but I'll give it anyway. It is about Marty McFly going back in time from 1985 to 1955 using a time machine in the DeLorean made by Doc Brown. He is stuck in 1955 and he has to get back while getting his parents together along the way. So like I said, this is my favorite movie. I grew up watching it over and over and over. Loved it as a kid, watched it all the time on cable. And so I do want to ask you guys, what is your guys' history with this movie? Why don't you start, Henry? What is your history with Back to the Future?
all right, yeah, Back to the Future. So I am Gen X. I am a child of the 80s. So of course, Back to the Future is very meaningful to me. So many people of my generation consider this movie very, very beloved. Like you were saying, Christian, beyond my generation also. This movie is just sort of universally loved, but particularly children of the 80s. And yes, I did see Back to the Future 1, 2, and 3 in the 80s. And it was just one of those things that everyone talked about then. Everyone knew Marty McFly, everyone knew Doc Brown, and it was just a thing. And yeah, for a long time, these movies were among my all-time favorites of any movie. Um, Now there is a bit of uh confusion on my end. I mean, we're talking 40 years ago. I'm not sure if I actually saw this in theaters when it first came out. I know I saw parts 2 and 3 in theaters, but think I first saw part one as a rental, like a VHS rental. Um, subsequently saw it many, many times, but I don't think I actually saw it in theaters on its initial run. So I have to give that disclaimer. I kind of like to brag about that, so I'm not going to brag here. Like, no, I did not officially see Back to the Future in theaters in 1985. But I will say this in the 80s, this film trilogy, and certainly this particular movie, part one, they were all very special and beloved to me back then.
All right. I guess before we jump to Porfirio, I guess quick question. I don't know if we'll ever get into this. Did you ever watch any of the other stuff with Back to the Future? There was a cartoon. Actually, also the Universal ride. I don't know if you ever went to that. Like the other franchise stuff that was around at the time.
Oh, that's a good question. I would have to say no. I didn't. watch any of the spin-off stuff or go on the theme park ride. I was kind of aware of all this stuff peripherally, but did not experience them firsthand.
All right. Yeah, I didn't really either. I did go on the Universal ride, and that was always a lot of fun. I
Oh,
always really liked that one.
nice.
But unfortunately, that's just like a piece of like lost media forever because it's a ride.
Right.
So, all right, Porfirio, how about you? Why don't you tell us about your first time watching Back to the Future?
My relationship with Back to the Future is like non-existent. I legit just watched this a few weeks ago because for this podcast. I feel like I understand like some references, like the DeLorean and we're going back to the future, but that's it. I've never seen the movie, so yeah, my first time watching it was a few weeks ago at the Grand Lake Theater, and it was a lot of fun. It was I'm very late to the game. I'm 40 years late to the game. But I think it still holds up. As someone who's just saw it for the first time, I think it's still very much fun and I enjoyed it a lot. So thank you for Christian for finally pushing me to watch this.
Oh yeah, and how was your experience in the theater? Since I think you're the only one that watched this in the theater.
Yeah, it was cool. It was like half packed in the theater and you know, I'm guessing it's a bunch of other fans who grew up watching it just kind of they were laughing, they were supposed to, and I think people were getting emotional, just I guess it maybe brought up memories and stuff like that. So it was definitely a vibe. I couldn't relate to it, but it was really cool just being allowed to be in that kind of environment.
All right. That actually makes me think, since this is your first time watching it,
Hmm.
since like this Back to the Future kind of is this like kind of like well-known, well-beloved movie. Um, like how much would you say you've already kind of absorbed through, say, like a cultural osmosis? Say like say the same way like Star Wars.
Hmm.
You kind of see all these kind of motifs and lines and references about Star
Oh.
Wars,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
and say like Wizard of Oz,
Hmm.
Karate Kid, other things where even if you don't see it, you already kind of know what the movie was about. So since Henry and I have kind of seen it through
Uh-huh.
uh, you know, much earlier, that's something like we can a little more easily pick up on. But now that
Yeah.
you've kind of you've lived your life and this is the first time seeing it,
Uh-huh.
like how much would you say you've already kind of like, oh, hey, that's what that's from, or oh, that's I
Like
already got you understood that. Like you mentioned it before.
probably like 5%.
Okay.
Like I honestly did not know what much of the plot was going to be. Of course I knew like they were going back to the future or they were going to the past and had to go back to the future, but I had no idea about like the whole like part of the plan was to get the parents to, have feelings for each other. I did not know that at all. Um I did not know that only Marty went back to the future. I thought Marty and the Doc were gonna go back together. So when he
Hmm.
died, I was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa!" I did not see this coming. Where's this movie going? Um, so no, yeah, like again, I knew the DeLorean was the famous car. We've seen it at Comic Cons. It's a popular thing among the fans. Um, but the music was also pretty new to me. Um, Yeah, I don't think I did not know a lot about it, I guess. Even though it's in a lot of popular culture, it was even mentioned in Endgame. But
That's right.
yeah, after watching it, I realized how much I did not know about it.
Ah, okay. But hey, it's good to have like a fresh face on the podcast, someone who hasn't seen this.
Mhm.
Whereas, Henry and I have seen it, many times. So, all right, I'd say let's get into the movie. So the movie, of course, as we know, starts in 1985 and features, I think, one thing. It's been a few years since I've seen it, but I think one thing that took me a little bit by surprise was how much time it spends in 1985 before they get to 1955, which is kind of where I think the movie truly like kicks off. That's when he has to get back to the future. But the movie kind of spends a lot of time on its setup of the world. So why don't we start with you, Porfirio? Because it's your first. Like, how'd you feel about, I guess, that sequence, the beginning section of 1985? Do you have any thoughts about that before we get into, the part where I say it really kicks off and he goes back, the setup
Um,
phase?
I guess like it was cool. The fashion was awesome. The music was cool. I don't think it spent a lot of time in that era. I just think I don't know. I found it like to be like a decent amount of time. But it was cool because the dialogue and kind of everything felt like it was a purpose. There's that beginning scene where there's like somebody trying to make like a petition or something to save the clock tower, you know? And mentioned how like it there was a mark, and then the parents talking about like how they met and stuff, like getting into the details. And I was like, okay, I feel like again, since this is we're going back to the past, like somehow these things we're gonna find out how it all happened. So it was just cool how it kind of all like just set up when we go back into the past. Like how is this all gonna be connected?
Hey, yeah, that's definitely a good take, and then a good thing you like. That's definitely not something. That's something where I feel like whenever I go back and rewatch it, it's definitely there's always a little piece in that
Hmm.
opening that I catch. So, what about you, Henry? Going back to it, how'd you feel about the opening 1980s first act?
Yeah, the 80s stuff is great. Like you're saying, Christian, the movie is kind of known for the scenes that take place in the 50s. Um, but especially now, decades later, it's totally fun watching the 80s scenes because now the 80s scenes are like those are period pieces also, right? And it really blows my mind that the present day of the movie is 1985, and they travel way back in time to 1955, but now it's 40 years after the present day of Back to the Future. So we're further away from the present day than the present day of the movie was from the past,
Oh
right? That,
no!
that that's so mind-blowing to me. That like it was already mind-blowing in like 2015 when, a lot of people were celebrating the 30th anniversary of this movie, and it was like kind of special, like, oh, you know, it was 30 years between 1955 and 1985 like in the movie, but now our present day is 30 years after 85, the present day of part one, right? But now we're even beyond that. So like it's like really like it just blows my mind. But that said, yeah, like I was saying, the 80s stuff is a lot of fun. It's a total time capsule. And we were chatting a little before we started recording, but to me, this movie is really the ultimate 80s movie. If I were to pick like one movie from the 80s to sort of encapsulate the era, this would be the movie. This one has all the 80s stuff in it. The fashion, the music, and the vibe of it. It's like got this really optimistic, kind of happy vibe. And that really kind of was how it was in the 80s. I think it was a little short-sighted, and we all had the wool pulled over our eyes a bit, but we were kind of all fooled into thinking the world was a very happy place. And this movie really reflects that. So yeah, the ultimate 80s movie, and the sequences that take place in the 80s in this movie in the beginning and at the end are really great. I think as good as the middle stuff, the 50s stuff.
Hey, yeah. Like,
Christian,
oh
doesn't
yeah.
don't they doesn't Marty come back from 1955 on November 12th, which was like 2 days ago?
Oh, hey, yeah, that is true. Yeah, and that's when the movie takes place
Oh
is
yeah.
November 12th, and today it is November 14th. So I guess we're 2 days
Yay.
off from this podcast.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, so hey, good catch. Good catch. I actually forgot about that. So um yeah, the what was I going to talk about? Oh yeah. It really does feel like the 80s. I guess I was born in 1992, so I wasn't there to know, but there's like a nostalgia to this movie. Now for the scenes that are meant to be the present day. So
Hmm.
it is funny how that, how it works like that. Um so I guess let's jump back to 1955 then. Let's they do all the setup. Doc Brown he gets shot, I think, by Libyan terrorist organization
Hmm.
that he helped and he stole plutonium from, and that's the thing that powers the DeLorean. And I guess that definitely is a plot that like feels like it's front and center in the beginning, but kind of ends up taking a bit of a back seat through the big middle chunk of the movie, which is most of the movie, the entire 1955 plot, which ends up centering more on Marty trying to unite his parents. To He messes up the big event that gets them together,
Mhm,
which is George McFly falling out of a tree, and Lorraine's dad accidentally hitting it, or no, not accidentally, he hits him with his car, and so that happens to Marty, and Marty's in that place, and now she falls for him instead of his dad. So the
mhm,
movie kind of like almost like it turns into a bit of this like high school drama, almost kind of. I'm gonna put that in quotes, with like a bit of a love triangle, or I
mhm,
guess square if you include Biff in there.
mhm.
And so I guess like since it's your first time, how'd you kind of feel about that, Porfiria? The movie kind of takes like a bit of a right turn.
I was so caught off guard. Again, I d- I was not expecting like yeah, Lorraine to be hitting on Marty and stuff. I was like, "Oh, this is so weird." Um, but it was fun. I understand why it's so beloved because this is just comedy. This is just playful, fun, innocence, And um it was just really cool.
Yeah. What do you think, Henry? How do you feel about that kind of right turn from like a more actiony kind of plot, quote unquote, featuring Doc Brown and like these terrorists and Marty trying to go back, but he go back and then high school drama.
Yeah, that's a good question because, for longtime fans like you and me, you kind of take what happens in this movie as like scripture, right? This is just how it is, how we've always known it to be. But rewatching it recently and trying to have a more objective point of view, it is a big curveball that you're thrown. Um, and it is really odd when this sort of sci-fi action adventure movie becomes this sort of like screwball comedy romance thing, right? And it's weird. It is weird. Let's talk about that a little bit, where um, Marty's mom, as a young woman, falls in love with Marty, right? And it's creepy, and like I was saying, like I've always I've I've come to sort of accept it. Like I've been aware of this movie for decades, and it's like that's just how it is for me. But you're looking at it objectively, it's very strange, especially for a movie like this. Like I was alluding to it earlier, but it's very kind of this feel good, happy, crowd pleaser kind of movie, but it has this really dark, weird thing going on, right? Like kind of a Oedipus complex thing. So yes, in the 50s, Marty's mom is hot for Marty, right? So that's strange. Now, the sort of new angle that I caught on to upon watching this very recently was, and let me know if you guys feel this way too, but not only is Marty's mom attracted to him, but he's kind of attracted to her too, right? It's subtle, but I think that's there also because when he first sees her and first discovers that, oh shit, this is my mom, he clearly finds her attractive. And he's like, you're hot. And he doesn't say the word, but he was going to say, you're hot.
Hmm.
But instead he says, oh, you're so thin, right? He like replaces the word. But I think there's like a mutual attraction thing going on, which makes it like even weirder and creepier, right? So there's some dark shit going on here. And it's pretty interesting, right? Because you take this movie that is very beloved for all age groups and is pretty wholesome in a lot of ways, but it does have a pretty dark edge to it also.
Yeah.
Christian,
Oh.
I'm low-key interested, Christian. You think like obviously that I feel like that worked for that time, but do you think like that plot would resonate as much in today?
Um. Yeah. I don't think that's something they would have written if they made this movie
No,
today.
I
Uh-huh.
agree. I
They would
agree.
they would have written this kind of like, yeah, like you said, like this very Oedipal subplot
Hmm.
about how his mom likes him and wants to ask him to this dance, and like, yeah, it's like it is like, and like you said, Henry, like he's like, you're so thin.
Yeah.
Don't they kiss also?
They do kiss,
Yes,
yeah,
they
Yeah.
do.
they do kiss, and like there's part of the movie where like he makes like later in the movie he makes a plan that um he's going to like take advantage of Lorraine,
Oh
Hmm.
yeah.
and George
Yeah.
is gonna come and like save
Save them.
him,
Hmm.
Yep.
and that's his plan for them to get together, like and to kind of add to the weirdness there, you know.
Oh yeah.
Hmm.
Oh
Of
yeah.
course, of course, he doesn't go through it. He can't go through with it when the time comes.
Yeah.
Hmm. I could already like see like Gen Z or Gen Alpha like just coming up to you, Christian, be like, "You like this movie?" Just being
Like,
like,
what's wrong with you?
I know.
yeah.
Yeah. Now, one could argue that Marty never intended to go too far or go anywhere with his mom. I think that there is a school of thought where he thought that once he made it past it her, she would get turned off, she would slap him or something. But then when she was like into it, that's when he was like, oh shit, I don't know what to do. Right. And the whole plan went awry. So there is that. But I guess, there can be different opinions on that, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely very of its time, I would
Yeah.
Hmm.
say. Of its
Yeah.
time, very 80s, and
Yeah.
like I guess it's also like this movie was made before PG-13.
Mm,
Hmm.
mhm,
Yeah.
So this movie's PG, and it is like uh, it's not the it's not the worst movie, or quote unquote worst, but
no.
like
Mm-mm,
I've definitely seen worse stuff in other PG-13 or other older PG movies.
mhm.
But this movie is pretty wild for the time, where you have swearing, smoking, innuendo, this like kind of this weird subplot, or that's it's kind of the main plot
But
of the
that
movie.
was a good question, Porfirio, about like would this movie get made today? Like, I would say it could be, but it would be like an R-rated independent film, you know? Like there would never be a PG mainstream wide release movie like this today that would have this weird like Oedipus complex subplot. Like I just don't see that happening.
Hmm.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely don't see it either. Not as like the big family friendly movie, the big
Yeah.
movie that you take the kids to, that the
Hmm.
kids. But this movie was like like super beloved
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
by kids and probably like I'd be curious to show this to I guess Gen Z, see what they think.
Yeah.
Do they would
Would they?
or would they love it as much as we do? As much what
Yeah. That. Yeah.
yeah, and
I,
just is it just something you brush off as well? It's just a movie.
I had
Was
a random thought, but like the equivalent would be like if what if today in like well not today but like when Avengers Endgame came out and they went back in time, what if when they went back in time Peter Parker went back in time, met Aunt May when she was young and she was all hot for him and he was kind of hot for her. Like imagine that. You can't imagine it, right? Because it would never
Yeah.
happen.
Hmm.
hmm
Yeah. It'd be
yeah.
super weird. Basically, that's what we're talking about here.
I mean, also, I don't know. There's Game of Thrones, so.
Yeah,
That's
well,
true.
R-rated, edgier stuff, I get, but there would never be like a mainstream subplot like
No.
this. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. Um well, so yeah, it is very like of its time in a way. Well,
Oh yeah. Hmm.
for a movie about time, like,
Yeah.
it's
Hmm.
like you said, Henry, it was the 80s.
Yes. It was a weird time.
Yeah. So, all right. I guess let's move I guess well, let's move on. So, to I guess let's talk about some of the characters, I guess. So in the characters you have because I think they're all pretty like iconic characters. You have Marty McFly, the main character, Doc, and then you have George McFly, Lorraine McFly, and Biff as kind of your central five characters.
Hmm.
Biff being the antagonist. Well, I would say the main character arcs are kind of with I would say George
Hmm.
features kind of the most prominent arc, even though he's not really a main character. In fact, like he doesn't really show up. He shows up before, but it's kind of just like a quick moment in the 80s and then takes a much more prominent role in the 50s. Whereas I would almost say Marty, like he has a little bit of a character arc, but doesn't really have as much. Not definitely not as pronounced.
Yeah, it's true.
So, watching it the first time, Porfirio, how did you like Marty McFly? How did you feel about him as this main character?
He was like what I think Henry alluded to earlier, definitely the teen throb of the era, you know. Um, but he was also, what's the word I'm looking for? Like adventurous and pretty smart to just try to figure out like how to get back to his time, you know? Um, he was very like he worked with what he had, and so it was yeah, his character is very very cool.
Yeah, like I wasn't around in the 80s, so um I didn't see him I guess as the heartthrob. But, looking back, it does make like it makes sense. So,
It
I don't
makes
know,
sense.
do you have anything to add, Henry, as someone growing up in the 80s? What'd you say about anything you want to say about the main character of Marty McFly?
Yeah. So Marty McFly is played by, of course, Michael J. Fox. And I was talking earlier about how this movie is really the ultimate 80s movie. And I mentioned the fashion and the music and the vibe of it, but the cherry on top really is the fact that Michael J. Fox is the star of this movie, and he is like the ultimate 80s icon, between this movie and the TV show he was on, Growing Pains. Like, oh, not Growing Pains, sorry. Oh my God, I'm blanking
Was it
on
Teen Wolf? I think
not
no, I
Teen
think
Wolf. The Teen Wolf is the
that was
movie
the
he
movie.
did.
Yeah,
Family
Um,
Ties.
Family Ties, yes, that's it. So between Back to the Future and Family Ties, he was, yeah, the ultimate 80s icon. And he is perfectly cast in this movie, and he delivers such an awesome performance in this movie too. Um, so yeah, I was definitely paying a lot of attention to this character rewatching it recently, and he's very likable. He's a very relatable character. You're introduced to him initially where he's like blasting loud guitar music when he should be going to school. So he's not super responsible. He's not like a perfect kid, right? And that's why we love him. That's why we relate to him, right? And that's also why we kind of believe it later when he's not handling things that well. When Doc Brown is asking him, "Oh, you didn't like interact with anybody, did you? Like you'll mess up the space-time continuum and all that, right?" And he's like, "Oh, actually, he like totally interacted with both his parents in the 50s. So, a different, maybe more not so well written movie, they might have not had him be kind of irresponsible like that, and it'd be harder to believe that he'd make mistakes. But you really understand, like, okay, this is Marty McFly. He's a likable guy, but he's not perfect, and he's gonna make these mistakes, and it all adds up to a really great story and a character that you can't help but love.
yeah, he is he's very yeah, he is a very likable character, and I I think one thing about the movie, I think with the characters is um they feel they all kind of they're your main five feel very like iconic. I feel like they all kind of fill like a role that you've probably seen before and probably after. Uh, but and they kind of feel like they feel tropey a little bit. They all feel like they kind of fall
Hmm.
into a character trope. The nerd, George McFly being the nerd, Marty being the cool kid, Doc Brown the crazy scientist, Biff Tannen the high school bully, Lorraine, the girl next door. But I think that they all kind of tread a line between like their own character and the trope that they're kind of putting on display with each of these. But I don't know, did these characters feel tropey? And I guess is that a bad thing if they kind of fell more into the trope camp? Whether this movie or maybe another movie. That could be a general discussion. That could be a full podcast, but in this movie, what would you say? Would you guys say they felt a bit more tropey or a bit more nuanced?
I felt like it was a little bit more tropey, but I don't think there was nothing wrong with that. I feel like as long as you create a good story, as long as you have like zingers here and there, memorable lines, you can make, you know, the same, like you can make something different with the same ingredients, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I kind of agree with that. Like it is a bit tropey, it is a bit exaggerated. Like the performances are a little over the top. Um, but I think it fits with the tone of the movie. This
Hmm.
is not a serious movie. It's a fun comedic movie, and it's actually appropriate for the performances to go that way, I think. And yeah, I think it fits with the vibe of it all.
Yeah, like I think like they all each have like these lines. I guess we can talk about it a little more later, but it definitely feels like they have these lines that like feel like they're like it's a very quotable movie, and you have like all these quotable lines from these different characters, and you have some really good performances here
Hmm.
where it feels like they're the character and it feels like they're the archetype kind of like merged into one. Um so let's see. I guess
Christian, can I
oh
ask?
yeah.
So I'm doing like a little bit of research,
Mhm.
and obviously Michael J. Fox wasn't the first. There was other people that were considered for the role for Marty McFly. So I'm just gonna read you some names, and I just want your opinion real quick.
Mhm.
So John Cusack, Ben Stiller, Charlie Sheen, Ralph Macchio, Robert Downey Jr., Billy Zane. These are just a few people that were considered for the role.
Hmm. Those are all pretty big names. I like it's hard to imagine anybody that isn't Michael J. Fox as Marty McFly.
Hmm.
But some of those are pretty big name actors. You kind of be curious to see like Robert Downey Jr. Uh, and let's see, Ralph Macchio, and let's see, what was the first name? Oh, Ben Stiller would be.
Mhm.
Hmm. Johnny Depp.
Oh, Johnny Depp too. Yeah, like I don't know. It's definitely something like something kind of like what if in an alternate universe.
Hmm. I think, you know, again, since this is my first exposure to it, but I've been like surrounded by Back to the Future like nuances my entire life. I just cannot picture Marty being played by anyone but Michael J. Fox.
Hmm. I don't know. What do you think about those names, Henry? Here.
Yeah, no, I got some thoughts. That's a pretty cool little research you did there, Porfirio. Definitely some interesting names, some big names of that era. Um, but yeah, like you were saying though, Porfirio, it, Michael J. Fox is the guy. Like they picked the perfect guy for this role. Like um other names you listed like John Cusack, RDJ, Eric Stoltz, they're good actors for sure, but they wouldn't have been right. Like m most of the names you listed, particularly the three I just mentioned, RDJ, Eric Stoltz, and John Cusack, they're more like kind of the wisecracker, sarcastic type dude. That's a little bit Marty McFly, but there's also like this wholesomeness to him too,
Hmm.
where I don't think it would have fit with any of those other guys. Like Johnny Depp, he's like the pretty boy, that wouldn't have worked. Um, and Billy Zane's kind of in that camp too. But yeah, no, they got the right guy here. And just quick tangent, Eric Stoltz actually he wasn't just considered, he was chosen. He was going to be Marty McFly. I think they might have even started production with his name on the call sheet. And it was like an 11th hour change to put Michael J. Fox in. And I thought about that a lot. Like, oh, what if Eric Stoltz had been in this movie? And if you guys aren't familiar with him, he's probably most well known for being in Pulp Fiction. He was the drug dealer who sold John Travolta the heroin in Pulp Fiction. And yeah, in
Oh.
that movie, he's like this sarcastic wisecracker. Like, I don't want to take the shot. You take the shot. You brought in this drugged out chick. Like you do it. Like he's that kind of guy, right? He's not Marty McFly. Marty McFly, like I'm saying, he's like he's the 80s. He's wholesome and good. He's not that that sarcastic, negative dude.
Yeah. Yeah, like Marty definitely plays, or Michael J. Fox feels like he's always playing Marty a little more straight,
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
you know? Like, yeah, he's not a wise ass as we would
right.
see. That I think if they remade it, you could imagine Marty being more of a wise ass today, you
Yeah,
know?
Yeah.
yeah. It's almost as if you cast Harrison Ford as Luke Skywalker kind of thing, right? Like all
Mhm.
those other names would
Mm,
be better for
mhm,
an edgier character like Han Solo,
mhm,
but like characters like Luke Skywalker and Marty McFly, there's like a wholesomeness and yes, an 80s wholesomeness to those
mhm,
characters, right? So like Mark Hamill, perfect as Skywalker, Michael J. Fox, perfect as Marty McFly.
Mhm.
mm. And then Christian,
Mhm.
here's some more names that were considered for the role of Doc Brown. Ready?
Yeah, go for
S-
it.
So Jeff Goldblum,
Mhm.
John Lithgow, um, Robin Williams, and Dudley Moore. Those are just a few that were considered.
Hmm. Interesting.
Ooh,
Yeah,
that's a
like
pretty cool list too.
I know. Yeah, that is a pretty cool list too. Um, and I think, Doc Brown is also this very iconic character that it's hard to imagine anyone but Christopher Lloyd in,
Hmm.
you know?
Also,
Um,
also,
oh yeah.
John Cleese.
Oh, John Cleese, huh?
Yeah, he was considered, I guess, also for the role.
Like some of those names, I think a little more than other, I think it was a little more than others. I do think Doc Brown still feels very perfectly cast
Hmm.
with Christopher Lloyd. So, I don't know. I don't know. What do you think about those names here in them, Henry?
Ooh, I got thoughts here too. So first off, Dudley Moore and John Cleese, too British. Nope, 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 nope. They're out the window.
Yeah.
Um, uh, John Lithgow, subsequently, he's played villains and stuff, and I just see him as too villainous to be a Doc Brown. But Robin Williams and Jeff Goldblum, holy shit, I would fucking kill to see a version of Back to the Future with either of those actors as Doc Brown. That would be
Mhm.
super interesting to me. I will say that.
Yeah, I could see that working.
Yeah. It would be a different movie, but it could work,
It would
definitely.
be. Like,
Yeah.
how old was Christopher Lloyd
Let's
in
see.
Ooh.
let's see, how old is he now? Because okay, he was born
He
in 1938, so
he
he'd
was
be about
46.
46. Okay, Jeff Goldblum I feel like would be a little young.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
Like I could see if they made the movie now, Jeff Goldblum sounds like the perfect choice. Now or 10 years ago,
Hmm.
if
Hmm.
they ever like I could really see him play Doc Brown now. But like back then, like let's see. Now I got to look up how old Jeff Goldblum is. But I could definitely see that. Robin Williams also, I think he does sound like a pretty good choice.
Hmm.
Hmm. Jeff Goldblum is currently 73 years old.
Okay.
Mm.
So he's born
Yeah.
in 1952. So he's about little over 10, a little over 10 years, like looks like 12 14 years apart from Christopher Lloyd.
Mm. The interesting thing about all this casting discussion is that the age almost doesn't matter that much with this movie because either you could be closer to the young Doc Brown in age or to the older Doc Brown in age, right? So you could either de-age the actor or age the actor, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
yeah, I think you almost go more with the actor and not so much the age of the actor, I
That's
think.
true.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Because in both versions, the 80s and the 50s, it's the same actor just with different levels of makeup.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Although Doc Brown, I'd argue they didn't really do much. He doesn't really
Yeah.
change all that much from the 80s to the 50s.
Yeah,
I
maybe
know,
they
yeah.
colored his hair in a little bit, but like that was it, right?
That's
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Wardrobe change, not a whole lot
Mhm.
else.
I do remember when we saw Christopher Lloyd did a panel at a comic convention.
Hmm.
I think it was Silicon Valley Comic Con, I think is what we said
Yeah.
a little while back. He said that when he got the script for the movie, and they sent it to him, he threw it in the trash. He didn't like it.
Yep.
I think if I remember correctly, he may not even read it. It was because he he felt like he was kind of falling out with cinema at the time, and he really wanted to go back
Hmm.
to Broadway.
Right, right. I remember that.
And he was trying to really change his career and move back to Broadway in the 80s, but they sent him a script, so he's like, "Ah, no, it's not me right now." And somebody, it might have been his assistant or someone, like, found the script, read it, and was like, "No, you have to do this movie." Like, and pretty much, like, talked him into playing
Right.
Doc Brown,
Yeah.
and which like was a crazy story. So it feels like we almost, very much almost, just like Marty McFly got a different version of the movie with a different actor.
Yeah, totally.
So I know, very cool little tidbits.
Yeah.
um so all right. Well, is there anything else about this movie um that you guys want to shout out? You guys have any favorite scenes or anything that you liked in the movie?
Oh yeah, as long as we're on the topic of like, I don't know, destiny, I did have a thought. Um, and yeah, this is pretty recently, just upon recently watching it. Um, yeah, this movie is great because I feel like every time I rewatch it, I get something new out of it. And the main new thing I got this time was I feel like with this film, there's this philosophical idea that not only do we have control of our own destiny, but we're also subject to little random occurrences that can significantly change our lives, right? So the controlling your destiny thing is like, it's pretty obvious, right? They're going back in time and um, you can like have a stake in what happens. You can change the world, right? So I feel like that's kind of this pretty explicit thing throughout the movie, right? Um, we're not just subject to whatever happens, happens, and there's nothing we can do about it. No, we can do something, right? And Marty's like, oh, I don't know, I don't want to be rejected by trying to become a musician, but no, you can do something about it, right? You can take the stage and like play some electric guitar and change the world, right? But the other thing that I'm getting at is, yeah, these little random occurrences, right? So like, you know, Marty's family changes drastically, right? The 80s McFly family at the beginning of the movie is drastically different from the 80s McFly family at the end of the movie, right? Why is it different? Well, yes, Marty took the initiative to do these things back in the 50s. Um, but there was chance involved, right? So the big one, of course, was Marty's plan to get his parents back together again in the 50s. And the whole thing, like we were saying earlier, it went awry, right? The whole plan went sideways, and Marty was being pulled away by Biff's thugs, and Biff was like assaulting his mom, right? And George goes to save the day, thinking it's going to be Marty playing the role of, this assaulter, but he sees Biff and he's like, holy shit, like, what the hell did I do? But almost by chance, he like just gathers the courage and knocks out Biff, right? And because of that one thing, a very random occurrence that really wasn't supposed to happen, several lives are changed forever, right? So it's an interesting thought, like we control our destinies, but there are all kinds of things at play that we have no control over. And it's almost like a curiosity. Oh, like what if this little thing changed in history? How would that affect my life? How would that affect my family's lives? How would that affect the world, right? So kind of a deep thought, but I feel like this movie is really saying like all the little things can really have a huge impact.
Huh, yeah. That is an interesting thought because yeah, because I guess earlier in the movie, like they talk about how their entire, the relationship of Lorraine and George pretty much happens because George fell out of a tree and her dad just happened to be driving on that road at the same time.
Mhm.
So it's kind of this random occurrence that pretty much like is what kind of what sets a lot of the film in motion. And yeah, like I think everybody has moments where it feels like there is like a seemingly random thing that happens that could either
Hmm.
change your life
Yeah.
or for yeah, for either for better or for worse, or as they say, I think a phrase that a lot of people said when it comes to things for the worse is wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Or I mean, people also say that for right place, right time. But yeah.
Hmm.
It's so funny, Henry, because I kind of got the same message, but I found it a little differently.
Hmm.
I got more like, oh, don't lose like that inner child in you. Don't lose like your youth, because again, like
Hmm.
you said, in the beginning, the parents they're more strict. They're more like, you need to be this way or whatever. Even like you said, Marty, he's like, oh, I don't know if I should do music or not, you know. But then towards the end of the film, like the parents, they're totally different. They're more adventurous. They're more lively, like how they were when Marty met them when they were kids. And the dad, he's continuing to writing what he liked to do in when he was a kid. And even Marty was like, you know what, I'm just gonna play and have fun. So I took the same message you got, but just like, okay, maybe it's just don't lose that inner child, don't lose what
Mm.
that that passion that you're craving.
Interesting.
Mhm. Yeah, huh. I definitely see that, but yeah, it's I guess it's two very different like very different things, but makes total sense.
Oh, and
And
last thought on that, like
oh
you're
yeah.
saying, Christian, this idea of little things having a big impact, it really echoes the real life story that Christopher Lloyd said on that panel about him almost passing up this
Mhm.
project entirely. And it was almost like a little random thing that he ended up doing the movie, right? And like we've been saying, a little thing ended up having a huge impact for really the world.
Yeah. So I know, yeah, something to think about. I guess
Yeah.
um let's see. Well, do you got uh let's move on to this. I have a question because
Hmm.
this has been thrown around a lot with this movie. Um I think over the years. This movie has been touted as the perfect movie.
Mhm.
And that can nothing's ever truly perfect, of course. But this like I've heard that many times from like just around the internet. Many people said it like it's something you guys may have heard as well. So in your guys like do you guys think that this is the perfect movie? So, why don't you start, Henry? Someone who's seen this
Hmm.
many times, grew up with it.
Hmm.
Do you think this movie is quote unquote perfect?
Well, like you were saying, Christian, there really isn't a quote unquote perfect movie. That said, even besides that, I wouldn't consider this a perfect movie. I mean, you could maybe look no further than the racism in the movie. Yes, I said it. Um, it's the 80s. It was a different time, but we talked about the Libyan terrorists. That was kind of cringy. Um, the part where they referenced Chuck Berry was pretty problematic. So there is a part of the movie that implies that the legendary musician Chuck Berry did not come up with his music on his own, but rather was inspired by a teenage white kid. So a lot of problems there, obviously. It's kind of one of these movies that's like, oh, it's all in good fun. But there's definitely some subtle and even so not so subtle racism in there.
Hmm.
Not the only 80s movie to have that kind of content, I will say. Like what else? I think when we talk about like the perfect movie, I think that reference is kind of more towards the screenplay and maybe the casting. Maybe we can talk about that some because you could argue that this screenplay and the casting for this movie is perfect. Like there's a case could be made for that. I definitely would say that. I talked about Michael J. Fox already. Christopher Lloyd as Doc Brown is a grand slam. Oh my God, he is amazing. He is my favorite character in this movie. He's hilarious, and there's a lot of heart in the character, the young version and the old version. And yeah, like I was just drawn to him uh, the whole time he was on screen when I watched it recently. Um, the rest of the cast is great also. Um, and yeah, the screenplay is like airtight. I think you may have mentioned this in a previous conversation we had, Christian, but like this screenplay is mentioned in like film school and stuff. There's a reason for that because it, it's it's just very efficiently written, The pacing is great and it's really amazing with all the payoffs and the callbacks, like little things like jailbird Joey, there's a reference to Marty's like criminal uncle at the beginning of the movie, and he actually meets this uncle as a baby in the 50s, and he's like in his crib with the bars, right? And there's a jailbird reference, and like this is a cool little callback, and the movie is just chock full of these little payoffs, and it's not done heavy-handedly. It's done like just right, like it's it the the movie is it isn't a long movie, it's like uh under 2 hours, and everything's just really tight and well put together. So no, it's not a perfect movie, but I think a case could be made that the screenplay and the casting plus performances are perfect.
Hey, yeah. I pretty much feel the same. I don't know if I have much to add to that, but what about you, Porfirio? Do you think this movie is perfect, especially after since this is your first time watching?
Yeah, going off a lot of notes of what Henry said, I don't think. I mean, what is perfect? I mean, Pacific Rim's perfect, sure, but that's another conversation for another time. But this movie definitely has its flaws, but at the end of the day, it's a fun movie. It's a movie you don't take seriously. It's a movie that you put on to just spend time with a friend, a family, and just enjoy and have fun and we just want to have a good time, And 40 years later, we're still talking about it, where there's still a major legacy. I mean, Christian, it's your favorite film,
Mhm.
and So it's not perfect, but I still think it has major impact on people. Like I was reading after I watched the movie that, you know, Doc's like character inspired like many scientists afterwards to get into like the science field, to get into learning about physics and engineering and all that kind of stuff. So it's inspiring, it is influential. So again, it's not perfect, but it's it, it's timeless instead.
Mhm. Yeah, Back to the Future is timeless. It's a nice little pun.
There you go.
um, well, do you guys? I guess you guys have already said a few, but can you guys think of any other like flaws of the movie off the top of your head?
I think off the top of my head, something that hasn't been mentioned is just Lorraine's character, her younger character. Just how uh lustful she was for Marty. Like she didn't even know him, but yet she played this kind of like blonde bimbo kind of airhead character, just being like, "Oh, I want to be with him and whatever," you know. And then also like, what the hell? Like her dad like runs him over and then brings her to his daughter's room. Like, what the hell? Like what? So I just think like again, it's a movie of its time, but her character is just so not written well in today's standards, you know?
Yeah, there's definitely some suspension of disbelief, right? We've been talking about it. It's not a very realistic movie. There's some exaggeration and
Hmm.
some tropey kind of stuff for sure. But, you know, I think in a way, I kind of understand the young Lorraine's behavior. They kind of set it up where she's like a repressed girl, right? And she's in a strict household and she needs to have some fun and release in her own ways, right? So that's kind of how I read it. You know, it seems very extreme and exaggerated, but I think that I feel I kind of bought it when she falls for Marty, right? Because she's that way, you know.
What do you think,
Mhm.
Christian?
Yeah. Um. Like I guess like yeah. I do kind of buy it. I see in some way how it feels for of its time, but um. I guess I could imagine it, and like there is like this cool factor to Marty that they kind of in a way like can't help but show off, especially as the film goes on.
Mhm,
Like he's the one that stands up to Biff. He's the one, and like kind of he like has the whole skateboard sequence in the middle
mhm,
where he like it almost seems like he invents the skateboard right then and there and
Right.
manages to use it against Biff while he's trying to, and like he can't help but look and act like pretty cool, especially of it, I think we compare him to the kind of overtly nerdy George who stumbles over his words a lot more
mhm.
and is a much more like in the background kind of guy and kind of gets pretty openly bullied and so like um yeah, this teenage heartthrob comes around and so she just like pretty much instantly falls for him. And like I guess you can also see the way she is in the 80s. Um and they kind of as well as they Doc Brown describes it, he even like makes a little reference of a nurse falling for their patient.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's right. That too.
They make a little reference to it, and her character in the 80s kind of like wishfully thinking of like a time past which this high school time when she kind of had the world a little more of the world at her fingertips.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I would add to Porfirio that Lorraine wasn't the only one who wanted to fuck Marty McFly. Everyone in the world in the 80s wanted to fuck
Yep.
Marty McFly. So I'll say that too.
Okay. Okay, Christian, okay, I have another question for you.
Mhm,
So, we see that scene where George is peeping at Lorraine,
mhm.
and then he falls over, and instead of him being hit by the car, it's actually Marty being hit, and that's how, he gets he breaks destiny for a bit. But I was kind of wondering, like, they don't really explicitly say how or why George was hit by the car, but I was kind of thinking, like, was he peeping at Lorraine and then he falls off the tree and then that's how he gets hit, and then somehow that that's how they get together?
Yeah, um, I guess I never really say if it's Lorraine or not, but, like,
Mhm.
he does, like, say, like, her dad's she kinda shouts at a building or shouts at one of the houses, "Hey, come here, there's a boy in the" so you kind of think that their house is very close, so it
Mhm.
could have been Lorraine, it very much could have been Lorraine,
Mhm.
which I guess, it makes things a little bit less of a random chance
Yeah.
than I guess they even kind of say in the very beginning of the movie.
Mhm. Mhm. What do you think though? Was it random or you think he was peeping?
Yeah, I think so. I think he was. Because it's meant to be like they kind of played at the beginning, like, oh, it's this random chance moment that was destiny that brought us together.
Yeah.
And her mom has told this, seems to have told this story many times to her kids
Mhm.
of about how they, hit by the car, fell out of the tree, and then she, oh, why were you in that tree? And then George is like, what? Like he wasn't even listening. He has no idea because he doesn't want to say.
Mhm. 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 Mhm.
So yeah, I think he was. He was very
That
much a peeping tom.
yeah. That is a good question. I mean, there's no doubt that he was a peeping Tom, but I was always unclear if he was peeping on Lorraine or not, or it was just some other girl. Um, yeah, it seems almost too much of a coincidence um, for it not to be uh, Lorraine. So I think I agree with you that he's peeping on her.
Mhm.
But was your question more like what was like what was the dad doing that he actually hit
No,
him
it
with the
was
car?
no, it was yeah, clarification
Oh,
if
okay.
if 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 that was George or not, and for him being a peeping Tom, he got what he wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that does also, go with the fact that he's attracted to her. He's attracted to this person and, more reason that they continue to be attracted to each other and that they married each other. So yeah, I definitely think he was looking at her.
Yeah, I'm just saying, Henry, there's less creepy ways of getting together for your significant
Yeah.
other.
Oh,
Yeah.
hey, dude, we didn't even talk about that. That's more creep factor in this movie. So
Yeah,
yeah.
another weird element to this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, so that kind of leads me to a question to you guys. So yeah, there is some weird sort of dark stuff in this film, but for the most part, it is very wholesome and upbeat and happy vibes. Um, I guess my question is, do you think this movie is too happy, too upbeat, and there really isn't much edge to it? For a movie this beloved, it is very, I don't know, very in that camp, right? Very happy-go-lucky, feel-good kind of movie. Is it too much, though, you think?
Hmm, that's a good question. Because I think like you kind of mentioned, where it was the '80s, things were a little more upbeat at the time than they
Yeah.
were now, and this movie definitely has like a bit of an edge but not like a it's like kind of there's like definitely some kind of darker, weirder subject matter. But yeah, the way it approaches it is definitely much more optimistic. And so I think I like it. I like that about the movie. I think that part of the what makes it such like a feel good rewatchable movie is that optimism that it has to it. And it definitely like this definitely feels like it's meant for general audiences. Um but also probably why like the movie would be if they made it today much different. You know, it may not have as much of that, or it might have there might be some other um political element kind of thrown into the movie.
Hmm.
So it does feel and it but there's because it's so optimistic, there's a bit of I think movie magic that it feels like. It feels
Mm,
like a Hollywood movie, you know, it
yeah.
where it's like a fun ride. So I guess that's my take. I don't know. What do you think, Porfirio? Is this
No, I,
movie a little too optimistic?
I don't think so. I think, not everything has to be serious. Not everything has to have like a political message or some kind of theme. I think there's just movies that are meant to just have fun. I think this is cool. I think that's why it's so beloved because people can go back to it very easily and just be like, hey, let's watch this. Let's have a good laugh. Let's have a good time together. Let's eat some popcorn and have a drinks and watch this, not think too much about it. So I think that's why it works. And so I don't think it's too happy. I think it's just a fun movie.
Yeah,
Right,
I don't know.
right
What
on.
do you think, Henry? Do you think it's too optimistic?
I don't think so. I think I'm with you guys. It it doesn't try to be a dark and edgy movie, and it really shouldn't be. That's not what we're going for here. And guess what? You know, there is some darker stuff if you look into some of the subtext and look deeper into some of what we've been talking about. So it is there. And I would also add that, you know, if you want a darker version of Back to the Future, look no further than Rick and Morty, right? Rick and Morty is based on Back to the Future. And yes, it is a darker and edgier version of Back to the Future. So if you want that, it's there for you. It literally seasons and seasons of it. So there you go.
All right. So well, you guys got anything else before I guess we wrap this up and give it a score? And any other shout outs, any questions, anything you guys want to bring up?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Christian, since I know this is your favorite movie, like I don't think did you say in the beginning like
Oh
why you
yeah.
like why you like watching this over and over again?
Let's see. This is definitely my favorite movie that I watched as a kid.
Hmm.
Over and I would say like I think especially when I was a kid, there was definitely a few movies that I would just like watch over and over.
Hmm.
I think Back to the Future, Batman Forever, Toy Story, to name a few. Um, and I would watch this a lot on TV. Like it came on cable a lot growing up. And so even when I didn't have the VHS, I would just always watch it whenever it would come on. And so and then I'd always find something new. It was always just kind of this fun adventure, and I think it's like you mentioned, Henry, it was just such a Marty's like this very relatable character, but also has this like kind of cool factor to him. There's a part where you kinda he does all this cool stuff in the movie and you kinda wanna be Marty. Eh, he he does the cool skateboarding, the guitar scene. He's
Mhm.
and like he of course, yeah, like in the beginning he's got the girlfriend wants the truck. He's going and they're going camping. Like he's late to school. Like he's a very wholesome character, but he's got a little bit of that edge
Mhm.
to him. But of course he's very earnest and he does the right thing.
Mhm.
And so he I think that's part of what draws me to the movie. I think it's um kinda like, I guess everything we talked about before as well, and
Mhm.
I think it's there's certain movies we all probably have, and I think this movie is for a lot of people where you watch it at a very young age and it kind of imprints on you,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I think for many kid I don't know if you guys did this the same way where you just have a few movies that you just watched on repeat.
Toy Story.
Yep, Toy Story. That was
Mhm. Mhm.
like many kids from our generation, that was Toy Story. You had it
Mhm.
on VHS, you watched it over.
Mhm.
Pokemon was another one.
Pokemon.
You didn't
Mhm.
have a lot of movies,
Mhm. But yeah, Pokemon.
but the ones that you had, you watched all the time.
Okay, I have a few more questions. So,
Mhm,
again, like we both, all of us, all three of us have said that this movie has its flaws. You two very much like it because you guys grew up with it, right?
mhm.
But do you guys ever think, like, in the future, that this would be like a movie that future generations will say, like, this did not age well. I don't know why people like this movie in its day, you know? Like, do you see a future where this movie won't be as beloved as it is now?
Hmm, that's a good question. I get because it is a bit of a moving target question.
Mm-hmm.
It could change. It could. That's a question that could be. It didn't age well in say the next generation, but the you give it another, "Oh, by the way, there's this old gem,"
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that they all kind of go back to,
Mm-hmm.
and, I definitely could see that, like we say with kind of all the weird stuff
Mm-hmm.
in the movie, you kinda watch it and you're like, "That's a kid's movie? Like, what was going on back then?"
Yeah.
Uh, Instead of something you just kind of, like, kinda roll with, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't know, it could be, I guess time will tell.
Mm-hmm. What do
Another
you think,
fun.
Henry? I just
Yeah.
got that.
Nice. Um, yeah, I think that is a good question. And I agree with Christian that you know, it's kind of a moving target. It's hard to say. Um, there are a lot of aspects of the movie that do make it timeless and it could be like a forever classic. A lot of things we've been talking about, like the positives, like the structure of the narrative and the performances,
Mm-hmm.
will like, you know, will make this a classic for all time, I think. And even like the problematic aspects, you can look at a lot of it as like kind of what I was saying before, a time capsule thing. Like this is how it was in the 80s. And guess what? Like the whole vibe of this movie is really America in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So that alone could be like something that can be looked upon in the future. And there might be uh, some issues have people have with it. But not only, there's some undeniably positive aspects of the movie, but even the not so perfect aspects, people could look at it and say like, oh, well, it's almost like a documentary of
Mm-hmm.
like of 80s culture in America, right? So with all that in mind, I think it definitely could stand the test of time for, decades to come.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Well, I just want to say, as somebody who's watched this 40 years later for the first time, I still think it's not something to like cancel, you
Mm,
know?
yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's still very much fun. It's innocent, it's something to enjoy. Yes, there are some problematic stuff, but I it's not hateful, it's not harmful. It's
yeah.
just it's just like like eerie, but nothing like, oh my gosh, can't believe they did that, kind of thing. It's not
Mhm.
anything
Hmm.
bad,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Well, go ahead, Christian.
no, you go for it. You had another
Okay.
question.
Yeah, my last question, you know, um 40 years later, like I said, we're still talking about this movie. What Why are we still talking about it 4 years later? And what do you think this film's legacy is going to be for the future?
Hmm. Because I will say one thing. That'll probably be leading into the question asked later. Is I think when you compare this to the big trilogies and franchises of the time,
Hmm.
it never really continues. There's definitely some little offshoots here and there. Back then there was a cartoon
Hmm.
and like a few small things. But this never really became the big powerhouse franchise that you would say a lot of the other contemporary big hits from the 80s. Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Alien, Predator,
Hmm.
Terminator. Um, those kind of still get entries today. And whereas this one is just a trilogy and that's it.
Hmm.
They've really never gone back to it. So but people people still talk about this trilogy. It's still very beloved,
Hmm.
and it did it yeah, it strikes a chord where it's very of its time, but it's very timeless. I guess it's hard not to talk about it like this without the time puns, but it definitely has that a balance where it's very easy to watch and then get into it, even though if you weren't even if you weren't alive back then. But at the same time, you kinda see it and think, "Oh, that's the '80s, that's the '50s," you know?
Hmm.
It
Hmm.
kinda somehow it gets you into those times.
Hmm.
So, that I guess that's my take. So, I don't know, what do you think, Henry?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's kind of a tough one to answer because, like you're saying, Christian, all these other 80s franchises continued on and on and on. Why didn't Back to the Future do that? Is it because Back to the Future isn't this timeless classic that Star Wars and other franchises are? Maybe, like with Back to the Future, it is so specific to certain time periods, right? I mean, parts two and three delve into other decades, right? They jump into the future and they jump into the Wild West and stuff. But with part one, it's just the 50s and the 80s, right? And like if you're to look at, American history, it really is like the 1950s and the 1980s that are like the most optimistic and idealistic in ways, right? Um, so in that way, it's very specific, right? It's almost like you can't have Back to the Future if it's not set in the 50s and the 80s, right? And that's very restricting, right? If they were to have like a whole series of movies or like a spin-off TV show, you couldn't just keep going back to those time periods, right? But if you went to other decades, then it's sort of like, oh, it fails to be Back to the Future anymore, right? So maybe that's why they couldn't continue on with the franchise, right? So in a way, like I'm almost contradicting what I said earlier in that maybe it isn't totally timeless because the periods of time they portray here are really part of the movie. Yeah, and it makes the whole time capsule aspect to it that much more interesting, I think, right? It really is telling that they're focusing on the 80s and the 50s and the fact that it's a very optimistic and upbeat movie because that was the feeling of America during those time periods, right? So yeah, it's just a very, I don't know, a kind of an interesting perspective when you
Mhm.
think of it that way.
Mhm.
I don't know. I still see it as timeless. I do see what you're saying, Henry. Like, that's very much 80s and 50s,
Hmm.
but I don't think like even though it is a time capsule, I don't think the era and the decade you have to be that era to enjoy it to
Hmm.
I think what makes it so why we're still talking about it 4 years later is because of how much comfort, how much people can resonate and just enjoy it and have fun with it. I mean, yes, like Christian was saying, like if we look at back at the other uh movies that came out in that era, like Star Wars, like we don't live in the future, but we love this idea of this like underdog fighting the main villain, and we want to root for the underdog and resonate with him. And so I think Back to the Future came from like a time when, again, like you said, Henry, like the 80s were just a place of comfort. And so, with everything going on nowadays in the country and in the world, we need that sometimes. And so I think that like timeless energy of of, of innocence is why people still go back and watch it for that enjoyment.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there. The reason why the legacy of Back to the Future lives on is that optimism. You
Hmm.
know, people look back and like there's a lot of negativity in the
Hmm.
world, but when you revisit Back to the Future, there's none of that, you know?
You could
It,
escape all that for two
yeah,
hours,
you
you
really
know?
escape. Yeah, you really
Hmm.
do.
Hmm.
Like, I also think like time travel itself. I personally love time travel movies,
Hmm.
and like I really enjoy the concept, and so I think time travel is definitely, especially because it features time travel with such personal stakes too.
Hmm.
It's very easy to get into that, and it kind of makes you think, like there's kind of a what it, there's like, oh, what if I had a time machine? I went back and changed a few things. Like like I think like that in itself, and I think the way that it does time travel, it's not too convoluted. It's not this big grand plot. It about the fabric of time and like all of that. It's kind of just like it's a very simple plot, a very
Hmm.
that makes it very, very easy to get into, but it
Hmm.
has that cool sci-fi twist, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
S- So, well, I have a like question for you guys seeing this. I think going back, like, Robert Zemeckis has very much said there's never, after the trilogy, he's done, and the movie, they're never going to have any more Back to the Future.
Hmm.
But I don't know, like, just personally speaking, is this something you guys would want to see either rebooted, revisited in any way, or would you rather just leave it in the past?
That's a hard no.
Yep.
I think, some things Hollywood should just not like milk money out of. Some things are just kept as, a containment and just enjoy it. I feel like, money grab shit doesn't always work, you know? We talked about Star Wars, Indiana Jones. Like some of the most movies are not the best, you know? So just I think enjoy the legacy, the franchise as it is. And that's my take. But I'm very new to this, so I don't have that much emotional attachment as you two do. So my opinion is very. I come from a different opinion perspective.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why no one's touched this in all these decades later, right? Because it really shouldn't be remade or re-envisioned or any of that, right? Yeah, I'm in that camp too. Like, why mess with this stuff that is so great as it is? That said, I know there was a period where there was some stuff going around the internet talking about Tom Holland and Robert Downey Jr. playing Marty McFly and Doc Brown in
Oh
a
God,
remake.
no.
And
God, no.
I heard that.
and like as bad as that sounds and as ridiculous as that sounds, of course there's a curiosity, right? I think there's some like deep fakes and stuff. I didn't watch them, but like, like, hey, I have to admit, like that sounds intriguing. Like if they did like an SNL skit, I would be the first in line to check that out, right?
Okay,
So
sure, yeah.
maybe leave it at that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that probably works best. I do remember that around the time, probably the first Tom Holland Spider-Man movie came out,
Hmm.
which is probably around the 30th anniversary.
There you go.
So, like, yeah, I'd agree. Probably leave it alone. Like, time travel is something where you could nothing probably will be Back to the Future again. And the first movie was kind of this lightning in a bottle. And if you would revisit it, why not just make something completely different, with time travel? So, all right. Well, you guys got anything else, or do you want to get to our ratings?
Let's do it.
I'm ready to
All
move
right.
on.
Um, why don't we start with you, Porfirio? Since your first time watching Back to the Future,
Mhm.
out of 5, what would you rate it?
Out of 5, I am gonna give it a 4. It's very fun. I don't know why it's taking me this long to watch Back to the Future. It's very fun. There are obviously some flaws, like I said, that I guess like took me out of that enjoyment. But overall, it's fun, entertaining, it's innocent, it's comfort, it's happy. Um, so what more can you ask for from a movie? And it's now it's cool to understand everybody's like Back to the Future references and memes. So I feel part of the cool kid club now.
All right.
Nice.
What about you, Henry? How do you feel about Back to the Future?
All right. Let's see. Yeah, Back to the Future. So this is a movie that is very meaningful to me. I definitely grew up on it, and I have, I don't know, kind of an interesting relationship with it in a way. Um, there's a reason why I asked you guys, oh, do you feel this is too upbeat, too optimistic, too happy? Because there was a time when I was very anti Back to the Future. So, I was young in the 80s, and I feel like I like my vibe was Back to the Future. I loved this movie. I loved the sequels, and I was pretty happy-go-lucky. Like at the time, Return of the Jedi was like my favorite Star Wars movie because it's so happy. It's like they beat the Empire, yay! Ewoks celebrating all that. But then the 90s happened, right?
Kurt
And
Cobain
uh
happened.
and then I realized like that happy 80s shit was not me, like I
Oh,
saw
wow.
I saw The Matrix and I saw Fight Club and I saw the films of Quentin Tarantino and I saw Blade. I'm like, this is me. I'm not Marty McFly. I'm fucking Blade, So there was a good period of time where I was like, I kind of rejected Back to the Future. I considered it too happy, like I was asking you guys earlier, right? So yeah, watching this movie just recently was interesting because it did bring back a lot of like childhood memories, a lot of happy childhood memories. But it also brought back these thoughts of me rejecting Back to the Future in my young adult years. Yeah. So now it's kind of full circle, right? Where am I at now? Um, and I can definitely appreciate this film a lot. I've talked quite a bit this past hour plus about how amazing the screenplay is. Let's shout that out. It was written by Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale. Zemeckis also directed brilliantly. Um, the cast is amazing. Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd, Leah Thompson also all great in their roles. The casting is spot on. I want to shout out to the composer, the great Alan Silvestri. The music in this movie is great. The songs are great, but also the musical score created by Alan Silvestri. And guess what? We were talking about Endgame earlier. Alan Silvestri is the creator of the Avengers theme song.
Mm.
And
Ah,
if you look him up on IMDb, his first two known fours are Avengers and Back to the Future. So that's pretty awesome.
The more you know.
Um, Now you know. So that all said, I'm gonna go with a 4 out of 5. Um, yeah, it is undoubtedly a great movie and a super duper entertaining movie. Um, yeah, I have, some personal stuff going on with it, I guess you could say. But objectively speaking, it is a great time. And yeah, I can't think of anyone who wouldn't have at least some fun watching this movie. Yeah, I know Porfirio, you watched it for the first time recently, and your reaction is like what most people get out of the movie. That's a fun movie. That was
Mhm.
entertaining. And when it comes to an entertaining flick, it doesn't get a whole lot better than Back to the Future.
Can I ask a really quick question?
yeah.
Yeah.
So, 90s Henry Grunch existed?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was into grunge.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. So I mean, you look at all these little cultural things going on in the 90s, like that definitely shaped me. And a
Hmm.
lot a lot of what I was drawn to in the 80s, I almost like rebelled against
Oh,
in the
wow.
90s. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Kinda. Yeah.
Hmm. We
Yeah.
miss. Did you experience the Grunch era decade, Henry Christian? Since that was we were
Yeah.
young.
Oh, I mean, I guess our grunge was like the emo decade. Cause
Yeah.
yeah, we were, we for us that would be like kind of the mid to late 2000s when that was really big. And that was very
Yes.
similar because like that had darker themes to it. It was all
Yes.
about feeling bad and crying in the rain,
Yes.
similar to grunge. And like I guess for us, like the '90s were a little more because it's like when you think of the kid stuff is usually more upbeat.
Hmm.
So the '90s for us, we had like Pokemon, you know, like the Nickelodeon shows like Rugrats, SpongeBob.
No, you're right.
That was stuff that was much more upbeat
You're
um
you're
in the
right.
late '90s, early 2000s.
Uh-huh.
But I kind of went through that too. There was definitely a time, I went that but with different things. Very
Hmm.
similar to Henry. You probably had the same thing, Porfirio.
Oh yeah, now that you're talking about this, I do remember, yeah, like being like, Disney's for kids. I'm too
Yep.
old for Disney.
Yeah. But I think for me, like I don't want to say I rebelled against it. I think I just didn't think about it
Mhm.
as much because my favorite movie was the badass Dark Knight. That was
Mm,
the movie with with like Joker and the clown makeup and
yeah.
Mhm.
all that.
Mhm.
Like,
Uh,
and that I started listening to more heavy metal and like you said, there were all those like screamo bands, at the
mhm.
time.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Go ahead now, Christian, with your rating.
So, I love this movie very dearly. So it is like we all said, like I've said before, this is my personal favorite movie. I would now over The Dark Knight.
Ooh.
um, the the darker pick. So I'm gonna give it a full 5. I think this movie is definitely an all-timer. I think this movie I say like it's entertaining, it's a lot of fun. I think this
Mhm.
movie has like there's like a very iconic feel to it
Yeah.
where it feels like iconic Hollywood movie making.
Mhm.
It has that feel good, the adventure, the wonderful, the awesome lines, the soundtrack. It's got everything.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think that like it's an action movie where there's not a lot of action beats, but there's a lot of really good tensity to a lot of scenes and a
Mhm.
lot of good motion. I
Mhm.
think the scene at the end where um they're trying to get the DeLorean to get to 88 miles per hour at the time of the bolt of lightning hitting is like a very tense scene,
Mhm. Mhm.
and like the skateboard chase and the um big guitar scene, the band scene are also a lot of fun and very cathartic scenes. And it has great pacing, characters, direction, writing. I think this movie's got it all. And I love it. So 5 out of 5.
Awesome. Oh,
Yay.
hey, quick question for you, Christian. Do you have a favorite quote from the movie?
Oh, yes. My favorite is um or why don't you make like a tree and get out of here?
Nice.
Nice.
That is my.
Awesome.
Do you have a favorite quote for them?
Oh, I do. And it's roads where we're going, we don't need roads. Of course, from the great Doc Brown.
Another great line.
Yes. And with that, we can wrap up the episode. This is farewell from Henry, Christian, and Porfirio.